Thanks a lot, Jade. Now, Mali's set for a runoff presidential vote in a little over a week after the release of Friday's results give no one candidate an outright majority. Also in Zimbabwe, President Mugabe's parties routed the competition in the parliamentary vote. Not a good sign for those hoping for a change at the top from presidential elections that were also held on Wednesday. And Tunisia's military launches an assault on the hideouts of jihadist militants along the mountainous border regions with Algeria. First, Malian voters will head once again to the polls to choose a president on August the 11th. Now, results out today show no one candidate won an outright majority in last Sunday's first round of balloting. The elections are seen as key to returning democracy and stability to the country after over a year of turbulence started with a coup back in March 2012. Friday's figures handed the lead to former Prime Minister Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. He got 39.2% of the vote, over twice as much as the 19.4% of backing secured by his main rival, Soumaïla Cissé. Nicolas Chemin tells us more about the two frontrunners.
Age 68, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, who's known as IBK, has been involved in Malian politics for several decades. Born in Koutiala in southern Mali, he was prime minister from 1994 to 2000. Then, between 2002 and 2007, he was president of the National Assembly. His party, the RPM, belongs to the Socialist International Organization. During the campaign, he received the support of Mali's Islamic High Council. His critics say he's too close to Captain Sanogo, the leader of the junta that toppled the former president last year.
Captain Sanogo isn't a bogeyman for me, but he is for those who never accepted the departure of the former president. There weren't many. People have often said exaggerated things about him. That hasn't been my case.
In the second round, IBK will face Soumaïla Cissé, the candidate of the URD party. He's 64 and used to be a finance minister. Like IBK, he studied in France, Mali's former colonial power. There, as an engineer, he worked for several companies, including IBM. He comes from the region of Timbuktu and says the fate of the youth is his priority.
Together, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's look forward and walk united towards a new Mali.
Last year, Cissé criticized the junta. Its supporters then arrested and assaulted him. This is the second time he's running for president. In 2002, he lost in the runoff vote.
Well, Cissé is accused of the government of widespread fraud in the vote. Nevertheless, he and IBK will be heading towards the runoff vote to secure the backing of the also-rans of the first round. These candidates garnered together more than 25% between them. At the top of that list is third-placed Dramane Dembélé, the candidate for Mali's largest political party. He took just 9.6% of the vote ahead of the 4.8% won by fourth-placed candidate Modibo Sidibé. Dembélé says that he's waiting for the final word from the Constitutional Court before deciding how to move forward.
People on the streets of Bamako were calm as they listened to the news. The results are now being handed over to the Constitutional Court. The candidate in third place with 9.5% of the votes, Dramane Dembélé, has already said he will file a motion to contest.
At the end, a candidate will certainly be named. As a believer in the Republic, I will accept these results if they are confirmed by the Constitutional Court.
As members of the International Socialist Group, the ADEMA PASJ should, barring any surprises, throw its support to socialist candidate Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. But IBK must also convince other smaller candidates to support him. And negotiations all around have begun for both the leading candidates.
To Zimbabwe now, and as he waits for official news of whether he's clinched another 5-year term, President Robert Mugabe is certain of victory and celebrating news that Wednesday's polls have delivered a huge parliamentary majority to his ZANU-PF. Zimbabwe's Electoral Commission says the party's claimed around 2/3 of seats. It's a discouraging blow to the opposition MDC, whose leader, Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai, this week ran against 89-year-old Mugabe for the third time. Observers from the African Union have dismissed Mugabe's accusations, Tsvangirai's accusations of vote rigging, although domestic observers agree that there were irregularities. Monitors from the Southern African Development Community say elections were free, but that there is still investigation to be done.
We did not say it was fair. It's simply because in the report that will come, because the question of fairness is broad and you cannot answer it within one day. And so be sure that within 30 days of our main report, the question of fairness may come. But we didn't like to jump into conclusions at this point in time.
Well, leaders from the MDC met Friday to discuss today's poll results and are due to release a statement regarding them on Saturday. In the meantime, they've said that it could take its supporters to the streets to challenge a vote that's been labelled by its leader a farce. Well, Nicholas Koch is in Harare and has been following elections for us. He tells us more about the speed of the release of parliamentary results.
Well, the speed of the results isn't surprising. I mean, there's actually very experienced in elections here. There's disagreements usually about the outcomes of those elections, but the efficiency of the process is not really in doubt. The integrity in the sense of what goes on in many of the polling stations. So, no, that wasn't a surprise. 210 parliamentary seats. I think we're certainly up to two-thirds now counted and being reported one by one. And yes, it looks as though there's an absolute landslide for Mr. Mugabe's party, ZANU-PF. Allegations, strong allegations from the local observers, from the opposition party itself, of course, the NDC. But so far, African observers, and they're pretty much the only ones who've been allowed by Mr. Mugabe to come and observe these elections, are saying they were okay. We'll wait for final assessments, but basically, yeah, both the African Union and particularly the regional body, the Southern African Development Community, are saying, free, peaceful, and probably fair, but we'll tell you later.
Well, this leaves, it's a bit of a shock for the MDC as ZANU-PF braces itself for presidential victory as well. Where does this leave the opposition, the MDC? If Mugabe wins, is Tsvangirai likely to hang in there for another 5 years?
I don't know. There's been that meeting today. I'm sure that this level of victory for ZANU-PF, there's no question that Mr. Mugabe will be declared the winner by a big margin. Mr. Tsvangirai will have, I'm sure, be seriously challenged from inside his party now. A series of defeats. They are saying very strongly that these elections were shockingly rigged. It's no question that the voters' roll was in no fit state to go into an election, but that seems to have been rather glossed over, in my view, by the African observers. But, Mr. Tsvangirai's position now is very, very difficult. It would be surprising if he survives. The question is almost whether his party survives.
Forest fires broke out in mountains targeted by Tunisian forces as they launched air and ground strikes on jihadist militants near the Algerian border on Friday. Caves in the Mount Chambi area were bombed as ground units moved in. The military has been trying to track down al-Qaeda-linked fighters in the region since last December and claims to have surrounded on Friday a group of around 15 fighters during this first phase of the mission. It's operating in the same area where militants ambushed and killed 8 soldiers on Monday in one of the deadliest attacks on Tunisian security forces in decades. And finally, a well-loved character here in France has hopped off the page and onto the screen. Aya de Yopougon, or Aya of Yop City in English, is based on creator Marguerite Aboué's childhood memories of the Ivorian city.
Aya de Yopougon is an animated film that takes place in Abidjan in the 1970s and centers on a serious 19-year-old Ivorian girl who's hoping to become a doctor. But ambitious Aya and her friends also talk about typical teenage problems, their hair, their families, and their boyfriends.
Coiffure, couture, commerce et chasse au mari.
I'm more like Aya's younger sister, Akisi. I would always stick my nose into everything. I used to spy on my cousins and my neighbors. They always seemed to have complicated boy issues.
Aya de Yopougon started out as a comic book series back in 2005. All 6 volumes have been translated into English under the name Aya of Yop City. part of the reason the series is so successful is it makes West African culture easily accessible.
For those who don't know Africa, first they feel they're in front of something foreign, but then they feel it's actually quite similar. It's how familiar people feel to the characters that's important. Also, we have no lessons to give, no lessons at all. It's just a work of fiction.
An upbeat film that avoids cliches yet doesn't shy away from tougher social issues, Aya de Yopougon is a must-see for Africa lovers everywhere.
That's definitely on my list of animated films to see, but that pretty much wraps up African news for now. But I will be back with more on Monday, Jade.
Okay, thanks, Georgia, very much for that look at all the news in Africa. We're going to take a quick break now, but stay with us. When we return, there'll be more world news and analysis, including the latest on the continued tensions in Egypt, where thousands are once again gathering in support of ousted President Mohamed Morsi.